How to Survive a Plague. The Inside Story of How Citizens and Science Tamed AIDS, by David France. Read for you by Rory O'Malley. Grief is a sword, or it is nothing. Paul Monette. Prologue. The Memorial Service. The experience of death, which had bound them together a quarter-century ago, unexpectedly reunited them on an unseasonably warm January afternoon in 2013. They made their way down East 32nd Street in Manhattan just after 2 o'clock, wending sedately toward the stark black doorway of the cutting room, a performance space hosting the memorial service for Spencer Cox, one of the country's most recognizable AIDS activists. Long before the glass doors swung open, a line stretched down the block. Taxicabs deposited luminaries from the worlds of science and medicine, of theater, advertising, and media, of activism, art, and academia. People from all over the United States, from Europe and Africa. Many of them were hollow-cheeked and balanced on canes, or on one another, slowed by age or disease, or a reluctance to re-enter the community of the grieving. Even the nimble among them wore haunted expressions. If you knew what to look for, you saw in their faces the burden of a shared past, the years and years of similar services. This was what survivors of the plague looked like. The crowd swelled to 500. Some among them were adorned in mementos, faded protest buttons or T-shirts with militant slogans. This was the generation that fought AIDS from the dawn of the global pandemic. Most had been members or supporters of the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, or ACT UP, the radical protest organization that started in New York City, but went on to count 148 chapters in 19 countries, with perhaps 10,000 members at its peak. The movement collapsed in the mid-1990s, when the advent of effective medicine finally staunched much of the dying. In the decades since then, it had seemed that the menace had receded, at least in America. But death convoked them once again. Few people personified the epidemic's long history in America more than Cox. A college dropout, he was just 20 years old when he got his grim diagnosis. Given only a few months to live, he threw himself into ACT UP, becoming a central player in the movement's Treatment and Data Committee, where patients and their advocates puzzled through the science of virology, chemistry, and immunology. Their insights won them audiences with researchers in the deepest corridors of science. Audiences, then respect, then working partnerships. It was the first time patients had joined in the search for their own salvation. Cox, a consummate networker, illustrated the developing science by submitting his own health complications to the scrutiny of reporters. In his drive to give the disease a face, he kept no aspect of his life with HIV off stage. Not his rapid viral mutations, his enlarging lymph nodes, the humiliating and painful diarrhea that regularly sidelined him, or the cruel complication that turned his left eye cloudy and useless. That was how I first met him. In the winter of 1988, he brought me his latest laboratory results to help describe how certain experimental drugs were thought to work, and how, in fact, they routinely failed. We met in a dark coffee shop late in the morning. Short and smooth-faced with dark eyes and floppy black hair, he arrived Brando style in industrial work boots, jeans tight as a sunburn, and a black leather bomber jacket over a white T-shirt, the uniform of ACT UP. His youth disarmed me. He looked like a teenager, not yet able to grow a beard, but he displayed a researcher's grasp of his own cellular tapestry and a facility for rendering complex immunological principles into everyday language. He was anything but self-pitying. Reaching into a canvas army surplus bag, he spun a sheath of his lab results across the table, accompanied by a line from Betty Davis that was lost on me. Until recently, Cox had learned much of what he knew from the movies, especially those of the 1940s and 50s, or the theater, which had been the subject of his aborted education. Over the ensuing years, he became a principal source for much of my AIDS reporting, and among the most effective treatment advocates in the field.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?